Welcome to this week's edition of the More Insights and Strategy Data Center podcast. I am Will Townsend, stepping in for Patrick Moorhead, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Matt and Paul. On this podcast, we analyze the week's top data center and data center edge news. We talk compute, cloud, security, storage, networking, operations, data management, AI, and more. So Paul, Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Well, I'm going to try to do as good a job as our illustrious leader does. The disclaimer, this show is for information and entertainment purposes only. While we will discuss publicly traded companies on the show, the contents of the show should not be taken as investment advice, probably based on all of our portfolios. And this is episode 8, so we are definitely hitting our stride, guys. So I want to start things off with my first topic, and I want to talk about Fortinet. They recently launched 2 next-generation firewall solutions targeted at large hyperscaler data centers, as well as mid-sized data centers. And it's funny, and I know Matt, you kind of track zero trust and all of that as well. So we sort of cover that together. But companies like Zscaler often call out that the firewall is dead. But Fortinet certainly proves that that's not the case. And in fact, as I talk to many customers, they continue to deploy firewalls. It's just sort of an extra, layer of protection, even within environments where things like zero trust and, network access from a universal perspective are implemented. But let me get your take on that, Matt. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the firewall is dead from a marketing perspective. It's not a fun story to tell anymore.
Right.
But
like VPN, right? Yeah.
Like VPN, right? Yeah, right. ZDNA is going to replace VPN. Or ZTNA, but it's like the firewall is long live. The firewall is dead. Long live the firewall. Companies are still consuming, are still needing the capabilities of firewall, even in this world of zero trust and the way security is so fragmented now, right? And you've got point solutions for everything. Firewall's not going away at all. Cisco makes a healthy living off, their security solutions. You mentioned Fortinet. There are companies like Hillstone. There are a lot of companies out there that are making a healthy living. And it's funny you mentioned the hyperscalers, because to me, that's a very sweet spot for, and I think more specifically around kind of the XSP, right? Whether it's cloud, ISP, MSP, and the requirements they have around and service providers in general, and standing up and protecting the millions of users they have, whether it's consumers and households or enterprise customers. It ain't going anywhere. I'm glad to see Fortinet in there. They're a leader, and it's nice to see these companies that have such strong presence in the security space kind of doubling down and leaning into this more, and not kind of playing into the hype.
Yeah, and I think Fortinet just, in particular, they've been sort of, I think, positioned in the past as sort of the value leader. You mentioned other companies that provide firewall solutions, and Palo Alto Networks is another. But from my perspective, this really sort of rounds out what they're doing from a portfolio perspective, and they're going after some pretty sizable TAM. Targeting the hyperscalers, those really super large data centers, as well as mid-sized ones as well. But appreciate your insights there. But let's go to your first topic, and you want to talk about Oracle launching MySQL HeatWave Data Lakehouse. That's quite a mouthful.
That's a mouthful, isn't it? Yeah, Oracle, I feel like I talk about Oracle on every blessed podcast we have. It's like, because they're continuously driving new products and new services out into the market. So before talking about their offering, just to level set what a data lakehouse is, because it sounds like something either out of Friday the 13th, combined with Revenge of the Nerds, right?
Right.
So data lakehouse, it's what you would think, right? Think data warehouse meets data lake, right? You've got lots of unstructured data, huge scale and capacity within a data lake. the data warehouse brings a lot of structure and the ability to, kind of attach those BI tools or analytics tools very easily. Lakehouse combines the capabilities of those. And there are players out there, Databricks, Snowflake, AWS has an offering, Azure has an offering. Big space, more and more companies, I think last I read, about 75% of the companies, if they haven't invested in a data lakehouse strategy yet, are going to.
Right.
Oracle announced this back in, they announced the preview of it, beta, let's call it a beta, kind of go old school, back third or last quarter of last year, and they launched it today. To me, it's significant for a couple of reasons. One, it advances what Oracle is doing with HeatWave, which that's a whole separate discussion. They've really expanded the capabilities of HeatWave and MySQL. But second, it shows them continually playing in these newer kind of nascent markets that are just exploding, right? Say 75% of companies are exploring it or deploying it, but it's still relatively a new technology.
Yeah.
And they're really well positioned to win. When you think about who the data management players are out there, there's one company that's been around forever, right? Seemingly forever. And they have owned the enterprise data management space, since I was doing it when I had more hair and less of a forehead instead of a five head. They were, they are, Oracle is the leader in the data management space, and kind of expanding into these places where newer and emerging companies are coming into play. It shows that they're not giving an inch, which I really appreciate. Second part of that is the MySQL. I want to kind of hit on that a little bit. And this MySQL, for a long time, it's always been like the departmental, divisional kind of database that I used to work on it quite a bit back in my days in IT, and we used it quite a bit across the enterprise, but in a more of a departmental level. This has really kind of gone from that to very grand in scale with HeatWave, real-time processing. Paul, in your space, you look at data lakehouses as, awesome repositories for deeper analytics or AI. It's amazing what they're doing. So I love what they're doing. I love that they're not just sitting back and being the old Oracle. And I think there's a lot of value that customers are going to find in this. So,
awesome. Hey, Paul, anything to add before we move to your first topic?
I'm sorry.
No. Well, let's move to your first topic then. You want to talk about Bing Chat Enterprise Boom, and that sounds pretty exciting.
Microsoft kind of lowered the boom on this. They were one of the first ones to respond to ChatGPT when OpenAI let it out of the box, and by using generative AI on all their products and kind of sealing it up that way. And they're addressing one of the issues that I've been concerned about is with some of this chat and the generative AI products and everything. When you type in things, you don't know where that data goes and who's looking at it and how it's stored and who can get access to it. With Bing Chat Enterprise, they're allowing you to use proprietary data, and they're protecting it. There's a lot of features that you can get, like natural dialogue, and you can integrate it with workplace apps like SharePoint and Excel and Teams and stuff like that. So it's really a robust product. It's they're kind of sealing it up. They're kind of the first to the market with this, just like they were with using generative AI.
I don't have a whole lot to add here, Paul, because your coverage area is like way above my my intellect capability. But Matt, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, I actually have a question for Paul. When we talk about this in the enterprise and kind of enterprise users, what are some of the use cases you see for a business user? Say using Outlook. I know that Microsoft made a number of announcements with Copilot. How do you see this realistically impacting users or helping users?
I think it's going to be a big time saver, a big productivity tool, because you think about things that you're doing with Excel and even on this call. You want to be able to take some time to summarize the call and dress up the notes and stuff like that. And the AI can take care of all that for you. Another, I give you a real life example of how AI can impact it. I had like everybody, I've got a startup involved, and we needed to send some people around to install electronic devices at 70 locations within the states. So I loaded in a business case, basically said, I've got 3 teams, 2 people each, a car, how much the car costs, how long they can work, here are the locations. Give me an optimized plan on how I can route these 3 people around and the cost.
That's
And,
pretty cool.
Yeah, it came back within 2 minutes and laid it out week by week what the costs were and what the routing was, and had to do some corrections and stuff, but it's coming along.
That's pretty cool. One last question, if you don't mind, Will.
Yeah, you bet.
So, this is interesting because to me, given the dominance of Microsoft in the productivity space, this would tell me that, or it would lead me to believe maybe that, this gives Microsoft a lock on kind of enterprise. How does Google respond to this? How do the competitors respond to what Microsoft is doing?
Yeah, Google Google took a little time to get around to doing it.
Yeah.
But I just wrote an article basically that Microsoft and Google kind of set the template for responding to situations like this. Mm-hmm. And after Microsoft added all the functionality to the products, Google followed along and did basically the same thing. Plus, they're providing foundation models and generative AI models and stuff. So
but it doesn't really. But it sounds like Microsoft still has a distinct advantage given their fact that everybody uses Office 365 in the enterprise, right?
Yeah, you're right. It does.
Yeah. Interesting.
Good stuff, guys. Well, hey, Matt, let's go back to you. Let's talk about Lenovo's big data management launch.
Oh, man, Lenovo, they're interesting. A few years ago, they were doing nothing in storage, right? Go back to 2017 when Kirk Skaugen joined Lenovo as the president of their ISG group. And, server market share was in the toilet and getting worse. It was they were not in a good place. Fast forward 6 years, and they're I think the number 3 server vendor now in the market, number 4 in storage. And, back in even as little as 4 years ago, they really didn't have a storage play. Or 3 years ago, they really didn't have a storage play. Now they're number 3 in the storage market. They're number 1 in the kind of the low end of the storage market. That's the 25,000 and below kind of space. And so this announcement really kind of, it builds on that momentum they've built across the low end. They've essentially 3 products or 4 products, right? Trying to remember the exact name. So there's ThinkSystem DG Enterprise, which is a high-end all-flash storage array, 6 times faster than hard drives, 50% cheaper. It uses QLC. Really great for unstructured data, big data, AI, supporting AI. Then they complement that with the DM300H, which is kind of the SMB version of that. It's more hybrid. It's a combination QLC and solid state or hard drives. Kind of, again, though, great value, kind of goes up the value chain from a storage perspective. And the last is, or the next one is, they built Azure Stack solutions on top of this. It's think Agile Azure Stack, so you can easily deploy this and make use of it for your Microsoft-based apps. And then they built software around managing your storage environment, data resiliency, data security. The reason I bring this up, again, it's kind of like Oracle in that it's not necessarily the products they announced, which are solid products and are going to find an audience and a willing market. And it brings them in greater competition or better competition with Dell, with HPE, with the other players that are have more rich storage offerings. It's the fact that this company, it goes back to what I was originally saying. They've gone from a position of kind of like just be part of the discussion to leading the discussion. Going from not even on the server tracker to number 3, from no storage presence to number 3 or number 4 and number 1 in the low end storage market. it's amazing what they're able to do, and how they're able to establish themselves. I'm really curious to see, you know, storage is interesting, right? The low end, which is more commoditized, is, you just go buy what's, best price performance. When you
Yeah.
get up into the more important workloads, data analytics, AI, deep analytics, AI, kind of and massive amounts of data, that's a tougher sell. And it really comes down to performance. It's less price sensitive. It's about performance, performance, performance. So while I haven't seen benchmarks, I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to play with this in that kind of higher end. They have a huge presence in HPC. They're number one server vendor in the top 500 list. That's going to help them, kind of move some of these servers or some of these storage devices. But I'm really curious to see how this plays out over the next couple of quarters. Given how they've been able to establish themselves, I'm pretty confident they're gonna do well. But I'll be curious to see. And Paul, I don't know if you look at storage in relation to AI at all, or you have any thoughts on kind of what you see out there.
Yeah, it's very important. I was just going to mention too, Lenovo has kind of been quietly investing in AI for about 6 years now. They started back in, I think, 2017.
Right.
Over that period of time, they invested like over $1 billion.
Yep.
And very few people realize that. And a lot of that investment went into the equipment that they've got right now and the AI that they're using right now. They've got like 45 ISVs, and they've got like over 150 applications that run on the Lenovo platform. So
you're right. It's amazing how much they built out that ecosystem, and companies, or not companies, but the market. You're right. It's almost like the best kept secret. I hope there's a way to amplify that, but it's a rich ecosystem they've established there.
Very rich, yeah. Some of the ISVs, I mean, they've got multiple applications from the same ISV, like several retail applications, self-bagging applications from different vendors, and so it is very rich.
Yeah, great story.
Yeah, no,
Great
it's
story.
incredible to see Lenovo's growth, and initially, spun off, from IBM, and focused on PCs for a number of years, and really just becoming a major player, and also with depth and mobile edge computing as well, right? So yeah, it's quite impressive to see their growth trajectory. But let's move to my next topic. And I want to talk about Microsoft extending additional free security tools. So, as a former marketer, there's always a fantastic market for free stuff, right? So, and so, this was an article that appeared in Reuters, but and many believe that it's a result of some of the security breaches that Microsoft has had to kind of weather the storm from. But I tell you what, I mean, I think there's freemium models always prove to be successful in a lot of different ways. I mean, that's how Zoom very quickly built its business, in consumer during the pandemic. And then obviously focusing on enterprise and shoring up its security issues, and the Zoom bombing that invariably occurred. And, in fact, my daughter experienced that while she was attending Texas Tech University during the pandemic. But and obviously Azure is building a lot of cloud security capabilities, but Microsoft in general, they've got quite a footprint. And in fact, recently I was briefed on the Entra platform, which is their identity access management solution set. And again, I continue to be impressed with what Microsoft's doing in security. And not a lot of people typically associate Microsoft with being a security solution provider. We always think about Office 365, right, and Excel and Word and all of that. But and I know, Matt, you're going to have a perspective on this as well. But what do you think?
I have actually a question for you. I mean, it's there. It goes. This to me is interesting because when you mention access management, identity access management, privileged access management, all these are different kind of point solutions that companies, I think of like a CyberArk up in Boston, right? And they've made a huge killing on identity access and privileged access. does Microsoft kind of baking this into, everything they do, kind of just commoditize that market and take away the ability of these? Is this the beginning of some level of consolidation in that regard, or what do you think?
Well, that's a great question because actually this conversation came up at Cisco Live when I had a chance to speak with Tom Gillis, that's running their new security strategy, the Cisco Security Cloud. And from my perspective, and Cisco feels the same, the ability to be able to provide a requisite basic level set of security is one thing. It's not going to be all things to all people, but to do that and then use that as a platform, again, getting back to that whole notion of freemium that I was referring to earlier, and to be able to move people, customers up the stack, and specifically based on workload and environment, be able to point them in the right direction, like, hey, this is a baseline, but given your workload, given your requirements, consider X, Y, and Z. I think it's a brilliant strategy, and I think it's less commoditization. It's certainly going to drive further consolidation because I think, Matt, you would agree that we're beginning to see that the amount of point solutions that enterprises are managing has just become untenable. We've talked about those numbers, I think, on a prior podcast. And so there's going to be a level of consolidation, and this might be Microsoft's way to sort of establish a beachhead and do that. So, but I've got a question for Paul. From a security standpoint in your coverage area with AI and quantum and that sort of thing, do you see Microsoft being a big player in the kind of the area that you cover?
Security is not really that much of an issue right now. It will become an issue. The biggest security issue right now is getting ready for when quantum computers become big enough to break RSA.
Right.
So,
interesting. Well, hey, let's go to you, Paul, on your next topic. And Matt, you want to say something?
Look at that finger. That's crazy.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
One last thing. Well, it's funny, just kind of back to the whole Microsoft thing. This is what I find interesting, right? This is the analogy I'm going to draw. 15 years ago, people were spending, consumers were spending gobs of money every year on antivirus, right? McAfee, right? Symantec, all of these solutions that were,
yeah.
And Microsoft came out with this thing called Windows Defender. And lo and behold, wouldn't you know it, people stopped spending money on these point solutions, right? That's kind of where, asking that question, it's kind of where my head is coming from. And they do such a good job of integrating it into everything in the OS, right? And up the stack from the OS. So it's going to be fun to watch.
No, for sure. No, I love that analogy. Yeah.
If you go one step back from that, remember when you had to buy spam protection? And then it became integrated into the browser. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that.
No, it's a great analogy, Matt. Well, hey, Paul, let's go to you. And Russia is on the quantum map, apparently.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I follow this quantum international stuff pretty closely. Russia has been working on a quantum computer for 10 years. And they finally announced that they have one. It's a trapped ion computer. It's got 16 qubits, which is pretty tiny.
Yeah.
They're working on something for 16 years. So I don't know what they're going to do with it. It was built by the state-run atomic energy company called Rosatom. So I don't know what they're going to do with 16 qubits, but it's important to Russia, and we've got one more pin in the map. So it's a great thing.
Paul, what do you with all of the political stuff going on, right, between the West and Russia, the West and China, what impact do sanctions and technology sanctions in particular have on their ability to advance their, quantum vision, if you will?
Yeah, it applies, to certain technology like NVIDIA's technology. But if you would do a search today on quantum and AI, particularly in quantum, probably 50% of them would be, 30% would have a list of Chinese researchers and China universities. So, and there's a lot of cooperation between China and the U.S. and different countries on quantum and AI research, particularly quantum research. So, in one sense, we need to, guard the state gold. But in the other sense, there's a lot of good that comes out of cooperation between different researchers in different countries. So,
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess there's the academic and there's the political, right? And yeah.
Well, and there's the
academic,
militaristic, as well, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Chinese academic is controlled by the state, but still there's that cooperation between the countries. So,
Makes sense.
Cool. Well, hey, Matt, let's go back to you. We're in the final stretch here, and you want to talk, hey, it wouldn't be a data center podcast and more insights and strategy without talking about NVIDIA, right?
Yeah.
So you want to talk about how they're going to be an anchor investor in ARM's possibly IPO. I mean, is that back on the stove again?
The IPO is on the stove. The anchoring, being an anchor investor it's let's call it a very well-founded and well-sourced rumor.
Okay.
It's which leads me to believe, and it makes sense when you think about NVIDIA's attempt to acquire ARM back, I guess it was 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Shut down by the regulators. It makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
It was also rumored that Intel was going to be one of the anchor investors, and I don't know if that was dismissed or it just kind of became a little bit more quiet when the word of or the news of NVIDIA came out. It makes perfect sense, right? And there are a couple of things to take out of it. It shows you how critical a healthy ARM is to NVIDIA. When you look at Grace Hopper and you look at NVIDIA's long-term strategy, it's their CPU is built around ARM Neoverse, and if they don't have that available, that puts a big chink in their strategy. That's part one. Part two, it shows the importance of ARM to the marketplace in general, or the relevance of ARM in the marketplace. I think they're like 4% of the cloud market now, which isn't huge.
Yeah.
But it's 4%, and it's 4% with a bullet. It's growing very quickly. And you see the announcements they've made with Oracle around supporting enterprise database in the enterprise. You see the announcements they made with HPE and the ProLiant RL300. You see what Lenovo has done with them. And you got to think that Dell is doing something in the background, right? Because if the other two are doing it, Dell's got to be doing something. So, I really think this is this speaks to the importance of ARM and a healthy ARM and the understanding of the marketplace of that. The other thing I would say is I'm a man of analogies today.
You are.
Just like I talked about antivirus. I'm not as experienced as Paul in this space, but I can remember back in the mid 90s when there was when Unix, whether it was Spark Systems or HPUX or IBM with AIX, ruled the data center. And there was this little chip company that was starting, made PCs and was starting to take low-end workloads away from Unix, file and print, directory services, like the really kind of not compute intensive. And I remember the big debate at the time around how this company was never going to be able to become prominent in the data center because they just couldn't compete with the performance of the big guys, right? Sun and so on and so forth. And 30 years later, Intel and x86 rules the data center, right? That was the company back then.
Yeah.
And the same arguments that were made about Intel back in the day are being made about ARM today. But ARM, what's different is ARM has proven its ability to perform, competitively with those x86 guys out there. So, it's going to be really fun to watch over the next few years as as this IPO gets figured out, as the company finds its footing, and the part finds its place within the data center, the enterprise data center, it's going to be really fun to watch. It's good for
I think it
everybody.
is too, Matt. And I see a lot of innovation that gets sort of, spun out of ARM. I spoke recently with Edge Q. They're doing basically a base station on a chip, and it's a really innovative design. I wrote a Forbes article about it, using ARM and RISC to do some pretty amazing things. And so, one of my famous, lines that I like to use is, competition breeds innovation. And I think having a healthy ARM in the mix is good for everyone, for sure. So, well, great. Well, hey, we're going to close out with Paul. And Paul, you want to talk about US VC firms warned about China. So that sounds kind of nefarious. So what's up with that?
It kind of goes back to your previous question. There's issues with the state versus the academic. The U.S. sent warnings to 4 different VC firms about investing in China. It was actually the House Select Committee that did it. And it was GGV Capital, GST Ventures, Qualcomm Ventures, and Walden International that got these letters. And so far, I haven't seen any response from these companies yet. But all these investments were linked to Chinese firms in AI and quantum and semiconductors. So the biggest offender was GZV, which was founded by I'm trying to remember her name, Jenny Lee. She was born in Singapore. But anyway, she started a pretty healthy venture firm. So it's be interesting to see what happened. This GGV had like 43 different investments that they were questioning, and they were all associated with AI. And apparently, China has been using this investment money to profile and in turn the Uyghurs over there. So I don't know how they got that link, but so, it's a worthwhile investigation, and it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. I'll like to hear what Qualcomm Ventures has to say.
So I have a question for you. It kind of goes back to what I was asking earlier around with Russia. Is this partly due, given the sanctions around, silicon and semiconductor enablement within China? Is this to further kind of put a chokehold on even kind of developing, designed in China silicon kind of thing?
Well, realistically, the amount of venture capital that's involved compared to what China is investing, it's a very small percentage.
Okay.
I don't think they're causing an incident with it. So
sure. Okay.
Yeah,
that's a pretty high bar. That's a pretty high bar to do. Manufacturing right in country. I mean, Huawei has struggled with that. Well, I think it's their high silicon division. They've been able to do design work, but that's always been farmed out to TSMC and others, and now they're squarely on the entity list. So it's interesting.
It kind of underscores what we were talking about with the generative AI and the models not knowing the Chat GPT, not knowing what happens with the data. So if you've got a Chinese firm that's involved with a model and you're using it and you put in data like that I mentioned that I was testing out. So if you know my name and you know all that big question that I put in, then you've got some idea of what I'm working on. So there might be some insights. So we need to be careful about how we handle that. Those inquiries.
For sure. Matt, any final thoughts before we close it out? Mr. Analogy.
Weekend, man. I have no more analogy.
What are you up to this weekend? You got baseball with your son or what?
No, he's on summer break. It's just a weekend to enjoy the lovely 108-degree temperatures in Dripping Springs, Texas. And that's it. How about y'all? Anything fun and interesting going on?
I'm just finishing my move in Bastrop, so I wanted to be closer to Elon. So this is our second week we've been sort of going back and forth in this 105 degree plus heat as well. I think so. The record in Central Texas or in Austin was set in 1932, 9 consecutive days. I think we broke that officially yesterday. And I happened to pick just one of the hottest summers on record to move. So I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to try to find, some shade and, drink a lot of lemonade and maybe a few beers. But Paul, what about you? Any big plans this weekend?
Now we've got grandkids are gone. So it's just my wife and I. So we're going to go see a movie and have some fun.
There's some great movies out. Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
the new Barbie movie. I'm sure Matt's going to be.
I'm there, man. Hey, you're the one with the pink shirt on. You're the one with the pink shirt on.
Yeah, I'm feeling, and I think I wore this on our last Data Center podcast as well. I'm excited about the Mission Impossible movie. I'm a big movie buff, and Tom Cruise and that stunt with the motorcycle. I mean, I'll pay my $12 to the local theater here in Bastrop to see him do that. But
oh yeah.
Well, hey guys, it's been a great podcast. Pat, we missed you, but we want to thank our viewers and our listeners if you listen to audio only, and please hit the subscribe button if you liked what you heard. If you don't like it, send those complaints to Matt. He manages the complaint box for the firm. So,
and I'm really good at it.
You are. So, thanks again, Paul. Thanks again, Matt. It's been a great discussion.